how to respond when your preschooler doesn't listen. So if you've got a spirited child, maybe one who marches to the beat of their very unique drum, has a high stubborn streak, or rarely, if ever, listens to you. Today, we're going to cover some simple, peaceful parenting practices for the preschooler who doesn't listen. By the way, if you like this video, I'd appreciate if you gave me a thumbs up. It always helps me out. So one of my clients reached out after having completely lost it on her preschooler in the toy store. And so he decided that I guess all the toys needed to be released and put on the floor. So when she left the store out of total embarrassment, it actually got worse when he then bolted out for a busy street. She was beside herself. So if you can relate at all to this, you're gonna want to stay tuned. So before we get into the nuts and bolts of what to do, especially in the heat of the moment, I first want to take a moment to step in. I'm going to invite you to step into your preschooler's Croc shoes. So first of all, why aren't they listening? And the reason it's important to figure this out is because oftentimes why we think they aren't listening isn't the case at all. If we have the wrong perception of it, it's very easy for us to get more frustrated, more angry, and then take it out on them. So there's three misconceptions that are really common that I want to address today. So the first one is thoughts of like your preschoolers defiant by nature. It's just the case of they're doing it to be naughty. So many parents incorrectly assume that when their preschooler isn't listening, it's simply because they're naturally defiant. Oh my gosh, they're going through that phase again. But it's not necessarily true. Preschoolers are at that incredible discovery stage where their autonomy is being explored, where they are differentiating themselves from parents. They're trying things on, and there's so much of the world to explore. So using a more compassionate parenting perspective can help you remember that this is an essential part of them growing up. It also prepares you for the teen years. The second misconception is ignoring you is a sign of disrespect. Remember, they're still little. They're still figuring things out. They're trying things on, and we want them to keep trying things on and not shutting down. So this is the time when they're figuring out social cues, how to interact with you socially. And you, my friend, need to be their guide. So they're not often intentionally dissing you. Sometimes it can get to that point if it goes on for too long. But when they don't listen, often they're just distracted. Sometimes they can be overwhelmed by their day and they don't have the capacity to listen. Maybe they're just tired. Sometimes they don't even understand really what's being asked of them, don't know the consequences of, like, for instance, running out into a busy street, and likely don't know how to better express their feelings and ask for their needs appropriately. But preschoolers are still developing those cognitive skills, their processing ability, their frontal cortex is developing, especially if you've got a child who has something like ADHD. So expecting immediate obedience when you instruct them is totally unrealistic. And actually, I feel it can also be damaging because it can actually create unnecessary power struggles that you don't want to get into. One other challenge I want to talk about before we just move on to what to do is that we can also pass off defiant behavior, stubborn child behavior as, oh, it's just a phase, and kind of ignore it, laugh about it, and not deal with it head on. This can be a huge mistake because if you're not setting the boundaries of what they need, if you're not setting a clear message of this is what's expected, especially when it comes to safety, they can start making interpretations about the world and then actually learn things you don't want them to learn. Does that make sense to you? When it comes to things like safety, that can also trigger our fight or flight response. So if you see your child running out to busy traffic, of course you are going to have a lot of adrenaline going through your body and you're going to scream, stop, all of that. That is appropriate. That is needed. However, If you keep not setting the container strong enough, the boundaries where it's clear, and you have to do that over and over again, that's the definition of chaos, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. The problem with going into your fight or flight response is that then you're not responding. You are reacting, and reacting from fear. And that's when we are in our fear, we're not coming from a place of curiosity, of looking at other solutions, etc. The other thing that can happen then is we are so flooded with anger that then we can get really mad at them, or we can start saying, oh my gosh, they're so defiant. And we start to put them in a box that doesn't leave room for possibility, leave room for them changing, leave room for their learning and growing. The other thing that can happen is that it can then trigger their fight or flight response, because if you have an angry parent, that can feel really unsafe. And that's when then they can fight you or flight you, meaning take off, which is what we don't want to do. What do you do in the moment when your child is trying to run away? So the first thing I want to look at is, what are the preemptive strategies? What are things we can do to guide our child from running away in the first place? Something that I want to remind you of is that front loading any experience. If you already have the experience that when you're out in public or when you're at the park, your child has been running away from you, you want to front load that experience and talk about it before you get there. So it might be something like, hey, I noticed last time there's some times where you run away. I just need you to know it's not okay, because it's a safety thing. As your mama, as your daddy, I need to keep you safe. So if you're going to do that, I'm going to pick you up and we're going to go home right away. Here's the key. The key is you don't do it in punishment. You don't do it in I told you so, blah, 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 blah. They may cry and say, yes, I get it. I can see you're really upset. We can talk about this when we get home. So set the container and then follow through. If you're not doing the preemptive, and we're going to come back to it full circle because it's an important one, is in the moment, it's so easy to stay calm, but you want to get calm as quickly as you humanly can. And you want to make sure you are calm before you say much more, other than stop, grab them, hold them. Keep your mouth shut. Why? Because nothing good will come out of your mouth when you are pissed off at your child, or when you are freaked out and you're like, I can't believe that almost happened. The emotional state you're in has huge consequences to how your child is going to respond to you, how your child is going to learn from you. Or, hey, I'm willing to go to the park with you, but we need to hold hands the entire time. Can you do that? The next thing is, when appropriate, involve your child in a solution. If they're a little bit older, you might even ask them, what can we do? What can you do to stay safe and still have fun? Holding hands, that's a good one. Staying within the fence, that's another good one. Great. And then you want to set the container of, and if by chance you forget or you decide not to, here's what I'm going to do. If you go outside the fence, I'm going to, pick you up. I'm going to take you home, and we'll try it again another time or tomorrow. Before you make the correction, one of the important steps is to connect before you correct. You can say, I can see you really wanted to play more, so you ran back to the playground. I can see you were having fun running. It feels good to run, doesn't it? Awesome. Connecting with them can simply mean getting down on their level, putting their hand on their shoulders, or just holding them. That can also be a form of connecting. The most important piece here, I think, is to teach and practice. So for instance, if you have to take your child off from the playground, yay, that's actually a win, because it's that you got to demonstrate to them that there are boundaries. The other win is, hey, we get to try again tomorrow. This is part of learning, is that we're not going to get it perfectly the first time. And we might need to massage it to make subtle changes as we go as well. So I really want you to not only be patient with your child, but especially be patient with yourself. If you are losing it, and we all do from time to time, I want you to have as much grace and forgiveness of you as you do for them, because we can't give to our child what we don't give to themselves. So if you have a child who is stubborn or strong-willed and you haven't yet joined my Peaceful Parenting Solutions Facebook group, I invite you to come on over. I do these kind of talks. And the other thing is, if you are at that point where you're ready, you're like, you know what? I don't have all the tools together to really react to my child without losing it or without letting them get away with too much, then invite you to reach out, because I'd love to hop on a one-on-one laser coaching session with you and see if we can't figure out your next best steps to make sure that you aren't feeding the stubborn child fire. Because nothing is worse than feeding that fire and really realizing later on you've got a strong-willed child on your hands, especially as you get into the preteen and teen years. If you haven't heard lately, thank you for all you do day in, day out as your child's parent. It is a marathon, not a sprint, and I am so grateful for you. Take care. Bye-bye.